Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating shift. We are taking a close look at how the physical tracking of our everyday waste is rapidly evolving into a highly regulated, data-driven ecosystem. We'll be specifically focusing on the massive flow of materials between Ontario and Michigan. We're essentially moving away from a world of simple disposal into a really complex web of environmental policy and international trade.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the border waste crisis, then look at Ontario's blue box overhaul, explain extended producer responsibility, navigate USMCA trade compliance, and finally wrap up with the future of waste data.
All right, part one, the border waste crisis.
So, where exactly is all this waste going? It sounds like a simple question, right? But honestly, it has a surprisingly complex answer. We usually just toss something in a bin and completely forget about it, but that item, it's about to embark on quite a journey, and a lot of times it's crossing international borders. Just to put this into perspective, look at this number, 19%. According to recent data, we've seen a massive 19% increase in Ontario waste being exported directly to Michigan landfills. That is a staggering spike, and it's putting an immense amount of strain on cross-border logistics and our environmental targets. And if we look at Michigan's recent environmental reports, a huge culprit filling up these sites is construction and demolition waste. I mean, it's a notoriously chaotic sector. It's just full of mixed materials that are incredibly difficult to track and sort. And honestly, that is exactly the kind of chaos that regulators are targeting right now to try and clean up the supply chain. Which brings us to Section 2, Ontario's Blue Box Overhaul. Now, keeping these materials out of those Michigan landfills and actually turning them into high-purity bales, that requires a totally new operational framework. The days of just dumping things are over. We now have to meticulously loop them back into a circular economy. And here is the absolute crucial takeaway for 2026. Recycling isn't just diversion anymore, it's data. Tracking packaging down to the granular level is quite literally becoming the new currency of the circular economy. You've got to know exactly what you have, where it came from, and where it's going. No exceptions. Let's move on to Section 3, Extended Producer Responsibility Explained. This right here is a real game changer. Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR for short. What this means is the financial burden is shifting entirely away from municipal taxpayers. Instead, the producers, the actual companies supplying the blue box materials to your home, they are now the ones who have to pay for and manage the collection and recycling of all those materials. To handle a shift this massive, a national nonprofit called Circular Materials steps in as the central administrator. Think of them as the bridge. They're connecting these really complex corporate responsibility mandates from the government right down to the physical blue bin sitting at the end of your driveway. But Circular Materials isn't doing all of this alone. Producer responsibility organizations, or PROs, like Rise Solutions, Landbow Canada, and EnviroFocus Incorporated, they are tasked with operating this massive new recycling ecosystem across Ontario. And they're the ones relying heavily on that granular data we talked about to ensure compliance and track exactly where every single piece of material ends up. Okay, Section 4, Navigating USMCA Trade Compliance. So because these materials are flowing across the border, environmental compliance instantly triggers international trade compliance. If you're moving recovered materials between Canada, the US, or Mexico, you have to follow exact procedural steps to claim duty-free treatment under the USMCA. You absolutely must verify the source of your inputs, prepare a complete certificate of origin, and strictly maintain all those supporting records for 5 full years. And speaking of that certificate of origin, keep the number 9 in your head. Unlike the old NAFTA rules, there actually isn't a specific standardized form for the new USMCA Certificate of Origin. But, and this is a big but, your digital or physical documentation must contain exactly 9 specific required data elements to be considered valid. So, here is your pre-shipment checklist. You've got to correctly classify the product with the right HTS code, verify the rules of origin, evaluate any foreign inputs, like, say, Chinese components, and complete those 9 elements. Missing even a single item on this rigorous checklist before shipment, well, that can result in denied duty-free treatment, major back duty assessments, and some seriously harsh financial penalties from customs. And get this, the paperwork doesn't magically end just because the truck crossed the border. Customs can literally knock on your door at any time. Importers are legally required to retain all this data and documentation for 5 full years. Having flawless data retention is literally just as important as the physical shipment itself if you want to survive these random audits.
Finally, Section 5, the future of waste data.
To put it bluntly, the old model of simple waste collection routes and third-party tipping fees is basically dead. Today, the most profitable companies out there are transforming into highly vertically integrated, data-driven logistical networks. By using things like advanced fleet telematics to track vehicle health and driver behavior, operators are entirely replacing guesswork with absolute, verifiable data across the entire life cycle of the material.
And that brings us to our final thought for this explainer. As we accelerate toward these 2026 mandates, the lines between garbage, data, and international trade have practically vanished. The tools to manage all of this definitely exist, but it really leaves us wondering, is your local municipality or supply chain truly prepared for the intense compliance demands of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I highly encourage you to dig a little deeper into your own local policies to see how this massive transition is going to affect you.